Do y'all dress
That
your
is
dogs
cute.
up for Halloween? Am I just extra?
Duh.
I do not.
When I remember.
I don't think they would tolerate it. Sometimes I put bandanas on them and they are very preoccupied with them.
Yeah, mine aren't fans of it, but I do it anyway. I bought them Halloween costumes today, and I got Brunner a unicorn one so he could be a Brunicorn.
I saw. So cute.
Unicorn?
Unicorn.
He's
Frack.
not impressed at all. But Winnie's is an octopus.
Aw.
And it's so cute. It's got little eyes on its head. It's ridiculous. Welcome back to Far-Fetched, part 2 of the Pitbull episodes, debunking dog myths about pit bulls. I'm Crystal Dunn, and my guests and excuse me, I can't talk anymore. My guests are pitbull advocates, Lindsey Ortiz, Kaylin Lavoie, and Sara Stein. And I won't make you guys go through that whole introducing yourselves thing again, because we recorded the first part, and anybody who's jumping in on the second part should probably go listen to the first part first. So yeah, let's just jump right back into this one and start out with the big doozy, which is breed-specific legislation. Anybody else want to take this one? Kidding.
I'll throw in a few pieces, but
BSL is BS. That's
Yeah.
That
Yep.
about summarizes it for sure. So yeah, BSL,
moving
breed-specific
on.
legislation, is a massive topic, and it could easily take up 2 episodes of its own. But I'll try to narrow it down to some more concise points here. So first off, what is BSL, and where does it come from? BSL is legislation passed in various towns, cities, and countries around the world that bans or applies restrictions to owning certain breeds of dogs. If you were to move to Denmark, for example, you could not bring your pit bull. If you were to move to Portugal, on the other hand, you could bring them, but with a number of caveats like sterilization and forcing them to wear a muzzle when out in public. In the US, there are entire cities and towns with varying forms of this legislation as well. It is a worldwide thing. So BSL can include a variety of breeds, including but not always limited to pit bull type dogs. And it started right around in the 1980s or so with the rise of using pit bull images in association with crime and like the war on drugs. So there's a definite link between those two things. It became more popular in the 1990s as politicians started recognizing how useful it could be. The imagery of an attack dog was an extremely powerful motivator for people. And it was working to make people very, very scared. So we kind of go back to that media representation there where it's like, oh, wait, this is really useful and effective. How can we use this to our advantage? And BSL was kind of born from that, more or less. It continued gaining traction well into the 2000s, and currently a lot of this legislation is starting to be overturned or has been overturned. Not to say that there isn't a lot of it, but we have a lot of case studies where it's shown to be grossly ineffective as well, and also cruel towards people and dogs. We are seeing some reversals of it here and there. It's still pretty rampant, though, and new legislation is still being passed, so against dogs. One thing a lot of folks don't realize about BSL is that it has extremely racist underpinnings. And this is what I meant by this episode. It's going to get a bit hairy because this is pretty ugly stuff. I hope to do a deep dive on this topic specifically in a future episode because I can't even begin to do it justice here. For now, I'll just invite listeners to do a little Google dive into the well-documented public discourse debating BSL, such as those conversations recorded in city council meetings and comments taken from officials. In those conversations and comments, just count how many times you see sentences like, "We don't want those people here." Then venture a guess as to what people they are talking about in regards to a supposed dog safety issue. If you're reluctant to do such things, the officials at Ellenville, New York, or of Ellenville, New York, left nothing to the imagination when they said that BSL could be an effective way to, quote, address the issue of Mexicans moving into the community. And if you like your proof in your pudding, look no further than what happened to the growing Mexican and Black population of Denver, Colorado after BSL was enacted. Spoiler alert, they did not roll out the welcome mat. Instead, the city targeted those neighborhoods specifically, seized their dogs, then made them pick up their family members in body bags from the pound. And there were serious financial penalties surrounding having pit bulls that were imposed upon those people as well. So, and not to mention, they were the dogs were referred to having, if they had one drop of pit bull blood, they were considered pit bulls, and therefore should be terminated, which is a classically racist term, the one drop rule. And if that sounds eerily familiar, it's because it's also been used for people. So to be clear, this is not to say that breedism is the same as racism. It's only to point out that the same ideologies are at play and that breedism is often used to enforce racist policies without saying the racist parts out loud, unless you're Ellenville, New York officials, of course. But in short, BSL is just this legislation that is incredibly problematic for a lot of reasons. We'll talk a little bit more about how effective it is here in a second, but first I want to touch on breed restrictions as well, because I'd really be remiss if I didn't add those into this category. Breed restrictions are not technically legislation, but they are extremely popular anyway, or anywhere pit bulls are allowed to live. So breed restrictions apply in a number of different business models, from RV parks to restaurants and stores that won't allow pit bulls on site. But they also most commonly are used in housing. And this is a big problem. It's also been referred to as a new way of redlining. So again, we got that hairy racist vein going through here. Essentially, HOAs and apartment complex management companies can do whatever the hell they want, so long as their policies aren't openly bigoted and racist. And since you can't be racist against a type of dog, well, breed restrictions have become quite attractive to many management companies who might also take issue with anyone who isn't melanin deficient. This isn't to say that all pit bull owners are people of color, because of course they're not. And these restrictions do impact all types of people, but not all breed restrictions are even racially motivated either, right? Some people are just dumb about dogs and believe whatever their fear mongering like Becky tells them, or whatever the media has served them recently. And so there's a lot of people out there that will enact breed restrictions thinking that they're actually doing their community a favor because they are not well informed on the subject. But you cannot deny the cultural links between Black and Mexican communities and pit bulls. And you can't deny the appeal of these policies to people who harbor deeply racist beliefs. It's obvious, and it should be illegal because it hurts people and dogs. One issue with breed restrictions, basically what they cause, is apartment management companies, for example, can adopt breed restrictions whenever they like. Management changes hands, you have a new management company, and they can instill their own rules. This happens often, and assuming tenants with pit bulls are allowed to stay out their lease while keeping their dog, which is sometimes not the case, they're still often forced to move at the end of their term or abandon their dog if they can't move. If you're a homeowner and a new HOA takes over, it's kind of the same deal. So you can buy a house in a neighborhood with an HOA that has certain rules, and you think that you are going to have to live by those rules, and maybe a lot of people don't even bother to look at the fine print, don't even know there's rules there. I mean, sure, you got to bring your garbage cans in, everybody knows that, but they don't really think about the whole dog thing, because who in their right mind tells you what kind of dog you can have in your own house, right? But it's really, really common, and HOAs also change hands. So a new HOA can move in and take over in a neighborhood, have their own rules. And then you have probably a pretty solid court case on your hands if you bought a house with under a certain set of rules and those rules were changed. But that's also assuming you have the time and money to fight an HOA in court, hopefully with a judge who gives a shit. So, yeah, if you're thinking all this should be illegal, you're absolutely right. It's a complete load of corrupt, racist, ignorant bullshit, and it results in an increase in houseless human population, and of course, an increase, skyrocketing numbers of shelter dogs in that are pit bulls or identified as pit bulls. I've heard so many people ask why there's so many pitties in shelters if they're such great dogs, and I just have a hard time not screaming like every time I have to answer it. You know, like, where do we start? So another kind of weird side effect of this touches on the service dog issue too, because a lot of people, to get around these issues, these breed restriction issues in housing, will register their dogs as service dogs, and it's caused a real problem in the service dog community for myriad reasons. One of those is, of course, it's really problematic when you have people registering dogs as service dogs who are not genuinely service dogs. But it's also kind of created this public outcry against it too. And I've even seen it in the training community where people will just completely like shame anybody who does it, who registers service dogs falsely. You definitely should not do this. But people fail to realize we are putting people in situations where they have to either get rid of their dog or do something about it. And so kind of putting people in a corner here too. And that's wrong. The other thing, though, that it's really kind of caused is this other kind of public outrage where people are attacking people with service dogs. So, you know, I saw a story recently. A guy was in a diner with his service dog who happened to be a pit bull. He's a veteran, and somebody told him he couldn't be there and kicked him out, and because he wasn't, they didn't believe him. So you're kind of creating this sense of disbelief in general. And because with a lot of service dogs, you can't see the service that they provide on the surface, a lot of people just like to assume that the dog is a fake and that the person is exploiting a very easy to exploit system. And so it's creating a lot of different layers of problems in the dog world and outside of it with housing. And then, of course, you've got the shelter overpopulation issue as well. So, yeah. So, I think we all know that BSL isn't really about dog safety, nor are breed restrictions a lot of the time. But let's pretend for a fun minute that it is, and that those dogs identified as pit bulls in breed legislated communities are, in fact, really some kind of pit bull. Has BSL worked for those communities to make them safer? And as I mentioned before, no, it doesn't work. Pretty much across the board, not effective. Bite statistics from countries and cities with BSL almost never reflect decreases in dog bite occurrences. And it's not for lack of case studies either, because this shit is everywhere. As a matter of fact, almost every place with BSL has seen an uptick in bite stats, right? Assuming, again, that bite stats are even accurately reported, which is easy to argue against anyway. But let's take Ireland, for example. This is taken from the Irish Veterinary Journal regarding their breed regulations that were enacted in 1998. Quote, societal attitudes towards dogs are changing in Ireland, with increases in dogs being housed in closer proximity to people. While this might suggest a greater threat for dog bites due to this closer proximity, evidence suggests that resident dogs, who are not fully integrated into family units, as being involved in a significant proportion of dog bite fatalities. In other words, dogs who are in close proximity to people form attachments to them, rely on their guidance, and as such account for a lesser rate of dog bite fatalities compared to resident dogs. A further study on dog bites in Ireland found that the breeds most commonly involved in attacks were breeds in the highest numbers with the population, or in the population. This is supported by further research on dog biting populations, which relate to popularity in a geographical location. Recent research has found that dog bite hospitalizations have continued to rise over a 15-year period following the introduction of the current breed-specific legislation in Ireland. The study suggested breed-specific legislation as not being a valid method of reducing incidence rates, and suggested that it may be contributing in part to the rise in dog bites as a result of reinforcing stereotypes of risk pertaining to dog breeds. So, in other words, if we want a better dog safety in our lives, maybe we should be educating people about dogs instead of paying attention to breed stereotypes and allowing their kids to lay all over them. Our own CDC considers these things as key to preventing dog bites. Spaying and neutering dogs and programs that support these services. So the vast majority of dog bites come from intact dogs. It's not breed specific. It's a dog who has balls or ovaries. Further public education about dog safety is number 2, especially that centered on child safety around dogs. Again, in this case, we've got the majority of serious dog bites being directed towards children. So we have a major disconnect between parents and expectations for their dogs that needs to be fixed. Animal control at the community level is number 3, with stricter laws against animal negligence. Yes, please. So 30% of dog bites resulting in death came from groups of owned dogs that were free roaming off the owner's property. So who wants to bet that Bill Joe Bob, who's letting his dogs run free, also hasn't neutered or spayed them? I would put money on it. So again, we've got this ignorance about spaying and neutering, feeding these other problems. Also add to that dogs who are intact are more likely to roam because, you gotta find yourself a girlfriend.
Looking for their mates.
Yeah. A dog who's in heat will attract male dogs from miles around. At number 4 is bite reporting. So evaluation of prevention efforts requires improved surveillance for dog bites so that more consistent trends can be identified and then hopefully addressed. Yeah, we got to know who's biting who, what's going on here. And our current methods for tracking this stuff are questionable at best. So that's kind of that's kind of where we're at as far as where dog bites are coming from, what's causing them, and how BSL isn't really doing us any favors. But what can we do about all this? Sarah, you're the light at the end of our tunnels in this episode.
Sure.
You want to tell us what we can do to fight for our dogs and people who are suffering because of all this?
There's so many things that we can do. So I'm always encouraging people to foster. However, I know that fostering is not something that everyone can do for so many reasons. So what can you do? You can advocate for them. You can start small, share positive pity posts, as I call them, on your social media. Anyone who's my friend on social media may have hidden me because of all my positive pity posts, but a lot of them haven't. And, my goal is to sway people and help them understand and see the other side, the accurate side of pit bulls and who they are and where they come from and where they could be. Adopting, don't avoid pit bulls. Don't say I'm only going to adopt a pit bull if it's a puppy because, I don't know where they've been. And, I heard that news story, blah, blah, blah. Like, that's not, I'm glad you're adopting. Let me just say that. Thank you for rescuing. But, give a chance to those older animals. We, especially in Lovable, I know have met some incredible older pit bulls who've been through hell, who are amazing. I will mention a dog named Norma, as we all know, angel dog, been through hell. Foster, adopt. If you have money to spare, it all helps. So donate. donate to these pit bull rescue organization groups, donate to the people fighting against BSL and apartment breed restrictions. Give your money to them if you see them, having a booth. I know with Lovable, like every penny counts for us to help our dogs medically, to help us get their, if they have special food they need, help us buy toys. The list goes on. Volunteer. And this doesn't even mean you need to leave your house. You don't have to walk dogs. Not everyone is in a position to walk dogs. Not everyone wants to walk dogs, and that's okay. You can be at home and make snuffle mats for them, which is some of our volunteers are currently doing. You can stuff Kongs with peanut butter for the shelters. Make enrichment toys. I've seen amazing children, instead of asking for gifts from their friends, they ask for donations for their local shelter, and it's just small things like that add up. I'm only one person, but they always say to that one dog, you are the world. And so like you giving $15 to the shelter, that might get a dog like flea control for that month and not have him crawling with fleas. There are so many things you can do. And in regards to volunteering, like I am not someone who is technically minded. So if you can volunteer and help us with marketing, help us with our websites, things like that, that is amazing. Transportation is huge and it's fun. I mean, you get to meet these sweet dogs. I could just go on and on. Anything you can do. If you're a photographer, donate your time to getting some great positive pity pictures, they're adorable. I think they're adorable, but those people who need to be won over need to see them in a flower necklace. You know what I mean? Take a beautiful picture of them like that. So bestfriends.org is a great resource because you can find places that in your area that could use your help. Like I said, use your help in so many ways. So bestfriends.org, look it up. Another thing you could do is by advocating in your city, if they are trying to pull this BSL BS, go to a city council meeting, be a voice for these dogs, have backup and proof of all the wonderful things you've seen. Bring your local veterinarian who is a big supporter of pit bulls. If you are a veterinarian, be a supporter of pit bulls. We are lucky to have New Hope Animal Hospital, and they are fantastic and they love our pitties. And they treat all their patients the same because they are all the same. They all need us. They all need our voice. And another thing you can do is if you hear someone saying something negative about the pit bull breed, speak up, don't be afraid to speak up for what's wrong. It all starts with us and stopping these false images and false ideas of this very sweet group of dogs. We just need to speak for them. So that's what I think. That's what I think you can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
And scene.
And scene.
I could go on. Let's just say that.
No, I think that's really great. I think on the legal side of things, if BSL is something that you like, I should say, let me back up. In general, there are about a gazillion different areas that you can do. As you were saying, you can do it from home or anywhere. If your jam is dog behavior, try to give time to that. Go if you want to learn. I've known a lot of really great trainers who were not full-time trainers that went to go volunteer at shelters, and that was really what they wanted to learn about was working with dogs, and that's really near and dear to my heart because that's kind of how I got started too. Is I just found myself in shelters and really wanting to know the dogs better. If that's your jam, then that's what you should do. Is you should go learn about dogs. There's a lot of shelters. I think the Humane Society that's in Austin is a great example. They have a full behavior program. Same with Austin Animal Center. But there's a lot of places where you can go volunteer your time at the shelter, and whether it's a program that they have in place or just somebody who happens to be there who knows their stuff, you can learn a lot. So if you want to work with dogs and stuff, it's a great opportunity to get into that world and learn a lot at a shelter. It certainly helped me get a very solid start into dog behavior. And then you can really kind of decide if that's something you actually really want to do too, because a lot of people get into it and they decide it's not for them too. But even then, it's still a skill you've built and something you'll be able to use with your own dogs for life and any that you want to help out. So training's a big part of it. But from a legal aspect, looking up the legal counsel in your area that focuses specifically on laws being created for the protection of animals is a huge thing. In Texas, we have the Texas Humane Legislation Network. It's a whole team of attorneys that work together. It's a whole nonprofit that work together to try to get things passed as laws, like anti-chaining laws and anti-cruelty laws. And BSL is one of those things that lands on their table quite often. So you can get involved with organizations like that as well. So again, you've got all these different options, kind of thinking about what your particular skill set can provide, as well as what your interests are, can kind of feed where you decide to incorporate yourself into this world. But I can definitely say from a rescuer standpoint, as somebody who's worked with a lot of different rescues over time and a lot of different shelters, there are no rescues who need your help more than pit bull rescues, because they're contending with a lot more issues than even your average rescue is. I mean, if Labrador's your thing, for sure, go help the Labrador rescue. But I can tell you at the end of the day, it's a lot harder to get pit bulls adopted than it is Labradors. And it's a lot harder to drum up money to fund the adoption of pit bulls than it is Labradors. Nothing personal against Labradors, but pit bull rescues could really use your help. So.
And on the note, I have to say that we work with shelters who aren't allowed to adopt out pit bulls. Mm-hmm. And so they reach out to us for help, and we always try to do what we can, but we are small, and that's, I don't think there are any shelters out there that aren't allowed to adopt out poodles, for example. It's just not right. And so rescues are fighting hard always, no matter what they're fighting for. Cats, rats, birds, it doesn't matter. But I have to say that pit bulls have a lot of other things stacked against them, that they are the underdogs of the underdogs, if you ask me. So yeah.
For sure.
And also, on that note of going to the shelters, if you are a person who is unsure of pit bulls, if you are hesitant of pit bulls, if you've never really met one and all you have is what the media has told you, I can't blame you, but take a step and go volunteer at a shelter, shadow a volunteer, and go meet some pitties and some pit mixes. Because I know that people who are in that position of, I don't really know, the second they meet pit bulls or pit bull mixes or whatever is labeled like that, they're like, they're swayed. It's like those people who are like, I don't like little dogs, I don't like cats. And then they meet that cat or little dog that is just so awesome. And they're like, how did I ever not like cats or little dogs? You just got to educate yourself and get out there and be face to face with reality.
I was just telling Jason the other night that the next pit bull we adopt, we should name Pudding, because if the proof is in the pudding, then we can just put pudding in front of people on a regular basis and be like, here it is.
The proof is in the pudding. Just
Meat pudding.
The proof is in the pudding.
Lindsay, you'll have one.
That's so cute.
with the cute Plucky name, and
Plucky.
I'll be over here with Pudding.
Plucky. Plucky.
All right, so that's all really great stuff that we can do, and it even goes beyond that. I'm sure we've probably even only covered a fraction of what people can do. There's some rescuers listening to this podcast right now that are like, "Why didn't you mention the blah blah blah?"
So much. Anything.
So much.
Anything helps. Everything.
I feel like with all that said, and how much help we still need and everything, I feel like there has been some progress made. Yeah, I know, like Lindsey, you and I have known each other since like 2010, working in the pitbull world, and I've seen a lot of great changes happen. It's not
Sure.
a battle that we're losing, which I'm happy to say. There's still a lot of work to be done, but there's definite progress that's been made. So, can you tell us a little bit about where we're at now?
Yeah, absolutely. So about 750,000 to a million dogs are euthanized. And so we're looking at, if I'm quoting that right, and I believe about 40% are pit bulls. And that's probably even higher than that. And the a good portion, it's probably gone down a little bit with a lot of the no-kill and movements and things of like that. But about 5 years ago, we were looking at about 75% of shelters were euthanizing upon intake of pit bulls. So even in just 6 years, I'd like to see new numbers come out, but I know that has gone down. The unfortunate part of it is that breeding has gone up. And there's just too many. There's just too many. And we have to spay and neuter. There's no other way around it. There really isn't. We can preach all day to adopt a pit bull type dog, and I hope you do, and give them a chance. I think every single one of us can say that, we at once upon a time didn't necessarily, unless one of y'all were raised with pit bulls. I wasn't. I was raised with collies and labs and things like that. And when I was truly able to open my eyes to see what was in the shelter and what they were facing when I was working in the shelter environment, I was crushed, and I knew that something had to change. And I will say that, although things are better, there's just there's just so much more to still be done. And I think, granted, there's a big portion of it that we still need to be persuading people. And I say persuading, that's the wrong word, but we should be still trying to educate people on this breed. But there's the part behind just the overpopulation and everything is even bigger. So we can advocate, but we really have to see a decrease as far as with using spay and neuter, decreasing breeding of pit bull type dogs.
I think that one of the really common misconceptions right now that may be getting worse in the near future too is that when we were seeing all these pictures of shelters being empty during the beginning parts of the pandemic, a lot of people just kind of held on to that, and they thought, oh, cool, problem solved. And they must still be empty, and they are not empty. In fact, I've had reports from people who travel around southern shelters quite regularly who say that they're fuller than ever, and that the problem is becoming more and more intense. And I think part of this is because we have a lot of people who are becoming more desperate for money and for basic necessities. And when you have that, you see things like increases in crime, and you also see very big increases in dog breeding because people want to breed dogs to make money. And it can be any breed that falls victim to this. But it definitely happens in the pit bull world, where we see these spikes in pit bulls being churned out when hard times are upon us. And hard times are absolutely upon us. We're in them. And it's not helping us. It's really doing a lot of damage. And so all this progress has been made in just this last decade that we can look back on firsthand and see. I remember having conversations with people when I was running the therapy dog team. All pit bull therapy dogs, first one of its kind in the world. We go in to some of the first places that we're trying to visit. And we're just trying to build up, a catalog of people who want us to come out and visit them with therapy dogs for free. And we were faced with ridicule about the dogs being pit bulls. And people asked us to dress them up. People told us flat out, no, that wasn't going to happen. And, 5 years into the program, we had more requests for visits than we could handle. So even in stuff like that, we saw this perception changing within our city, especially, where with good shelter reform and all these other things happening, you can do some pretty great things to change the perception of pit bulls just by doing things like getting them involved in therapy work. But with all that progress, I think what we're facing right now is major danger to all that progress, and what could become a very fast undoing when you add in things like natural disasters. We're going to be inundated with homeless dogs, and then people are going to breed them more out of desperation as well. So we really kind of need to get in front of the problem, because it's about to get really real up in here. And I don't know about y'all, but I've seen enough realness for like 10 lifetimes in the dog world. I don't want any more realness.
Yeah.
I'm good.
And I think that, as far as like the perception of the breed, I think we've done, again, you know what I mean by we, just people who support this breed have done a really good job about helping and changing that perception. But we're going to continue to face these issues if we're having dogs taken to the shelter because of these housing laws. And I would say that we could probably keep a good, don't quote me on this, 30% of dogs out of pit bull type dogs out of the shelter, or dogs that are grouped into the breed specific housing rules out of the shelter. So there's so many, there's these main facets that we could, if we could just keep fighting the good fight to keep these dogs in their homes, along with spay and neuter, and along with being able to provide more and more resources, then we would we'll make leaps and bounds. And I really do hope and that we will continue. I know we will continue to fight that fight and to help make a difference.
Yeah. If you look at cases like the Netherlands, we know that it could be done. But yeah, to your point, spay and neuter is at the root of all of that. Without that, we got nothing. We're treading water. And it's worth treading it, because you're saving lives still, you're still doing good. And it's a good way to feel effective when otherwise you feel pretty hopeless. But if you look at the Netherlands, again, like they had a good spay neuter program. They mandated it, and they mandated microchipping so that dogs could be returned home, which is another big problem. Mm-hmm. And then, with these measures put into place, they don't have stray dogs anymore, y'all. You can't. I won't say it's a non-issue, because I think it's an issue everywhere, no matter what, so long as people live with dogs. But it certainly doesn't even compare to here. Like, I met somebody from there years ago before they had kind of eradicated the issue, and even then they were like, "So we hear you have entire buildings full of dogs. We'd like to see them." And I was like, "You're on vacation? And you want to go to a dog shelter?" And they're like, "Yeah, we want to see the dogs." So I was like, okay, this is probably not going to pan out the way you think it's going to, so we need to have a conversation. So it's not going to be a fun thing for you to see.
It's not a doggy daycare.
No,
it's not a happy, fun place where they all just play all day.
Yeah, and they're like, "We hear you have a lot of dogs," and I'm like, "I know it sounds great, but it's not." So anyhow, yeah.
But with that note, Sarah. Yeah, sorry, just on that note, Sarah, when you say like, and what you're saying, Crystal, is, shelters aren't these typical, bright walls and happy faces and stuff. Everyone's overworked and, the dogs are stressed and tired. I think we can also change that. And I think that some shelters have. And they've really set the tone of what a shelter could look like and help get those dogs adopted a lot faster. And I think some So, and I know it's not that as easy as just snapping your fingers. The funds are in place, right? I mean, I know that there's a lot of hoops to jump through, but yeah, just as far as like even walking into a shelter, we could change that. We could change that where they have little couches and they have bright walls and they have enrichments and they have trainers there, and those things are doable. They've been done.
And we know there are so many people we all know personally who are doing everything they can to get as close to that as possible.
Yep.
But again, they need help,
They need help.
They're only one person.
Yep.
But I mean, the people who are working and volunteering in shelters, almost all of them are, like, in my opinion, sent from heaven. They're just, they're the best thing ever, and they're working so hard.
Yeah, it takes
So
a
let's
But
certain,
again, they need help.
Yep.
certain level of strength in a person.
Don't say
to
you can't
go
go
to
in
that
there
every
because
day.
it makes you sad.
Yeah, go
Right.
in there.
Don't,
Yep.
yeah.
Ain't nobody want to hear
Don't
that.
say I can't go to a shelter. I want to take them all home. Yeah.
Suck it
I
up,
mean, yeah, of
Buttercup.
course you want to take them all home, but how
Go
about
get
you
one.
just
Start with one,
Yeah.
maybe.
That's right.
Yeah.
go help them. That's all.
But the first few times that I went to the shelter with you, when I started with Lovable, I wore my sunglasses inside and out because I cried every time. But you gotta keep
It's a
going.
big reality. It's a big wake up call. And I think people need to see that. There's
Yeah.
a lot of amazing dogs there. And then you'll see how much help they need. So
Yeah.
hopefully you'll be moved to help.
Yeah, I think the emotions are what truly trigger anybody's desire and passion to do something about it. So, you know what? Go in there and be a little sad.
Yeah.
Go in there and be a little sad. I want you to. And then I want you to take that sadness and I want you to turn that into even a minute bit of passion.
Yeah.
And then take that and pass it on to the next person and bring your friend to come with you, because that is the only way that we're going to get to that point. 9 out of 10 people tell me they're not going to go volunteer at a shelter because they don't want to be sad and they know they want to take them all home. And you know what? That's what breaks my heart. That's
Because you're
what
not doing
breaks my
anything
heart.
then.
Because
Well,
then
you know what? There's a
You know
lot.
what? Yeah.
There's a lot to be taken from that experience too that is not sad. That can really change you fundamentally as a person for the better and make you a much
Absolutely.
happier person too. Like, yeah, it's painful in the
Absolutely.
moment. It might make you sad, but there is nothing worse than feeling helpless. You know, there's nothing worse than
Yep.
sitting back on your ass at your house and watching the world burn around you and wishing you could do something and ultimately not doing anything. I used to really have a hard time. I mean, I still do, but have a hard time listening to rescue stories or sad stories about, you know, dogs being rescued. I didn't even want to subject myself to it because I knew it was going to hurt. And when I got into dog rescue, what I realized was that doing something to work against it made all those other things a lot more manageable for me. You know, all of a sudden that story is painful, yes, but I'm doing what I can. So I don't have to carry that around with me all day long. You know, I don't have to feel terrible about it because I know that I put my time in, I put my effort in. And there's, I think, a lot to be said about that when it comes to battling depression, you know, and especially in the world we live in right now. You know, you're sad about something, that's okay. Be sad about it, but don't sit on your hands and wish it would change and wonder why it doesn't when you do nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you're doing something, it makes you
Go
feel a
cuddle
hell of a
some
lot
dogs.
better. Yeah. And the dogs being
Stuff
present
some
certainly
Kongs
helps.
for 'em.
Yeah. Stuff some
And
Kongs.
that sad dog's now a happy dog, and you're now a happy person, and it
Yep.
works.
It does. It does. It goes both ways, doesn't it? So yeah. So
and also just
Go
sorry, there's a lag, so I know we're talking over each other. I apologize. But there's also so many things that can come out of volunteering. You know, whether or not you take one home or not, right? That's not the whole objective per se. It's really being there to help. But you know, to volunteer, especially for younger individuals, that can really start paving a road for you, even in your career. It doesn't mean you have to work with dogs, but it really can, just from volunteering. And that's volunteering anywhere, but just volunteering can really start opening up doors for you. So yeah, just wanted to plug that in there.
Yeah, you meet all kinds of people in that world, don't you? So yeah, so I think all of this kind of boils down to things that we can do like in our own worlds as well. And those of us who have pit bulls also have this responsibility to the breed. So I wanted to touch on that real quick because I think it's really important. Yes, you want to be an advocate. You want to be able to speak out for pit bulls and maybe even volunteer and do all the good things. But also, if you just have a pit bull, there's a bit that you should know about it because the issue touches you directly. When we would start training for pit crew, the therapy dogs, this was one of the first conversations we had. We had the discussion about how to advocate for our dogs, how to talk about pit bulls, how to be responsible and represent in public places as responsible guardians, because it's really, really important part of having a pit bull. The odds are stacked against pit bulls. So those of us who adopt them must hold ourselves to kind of a higher standard, right? So first things first, you got to train your dog. You can't go and get a pit bull of any kind unless they're just like a lazy potato and not do anything with them. They are terriers at some point, right? You gotta still respect that you are adopting a large to medium-sized dog who has needs, and they are not couch decorations unless they're Bruner, and you got to do something with them. And even Bruner required training, minimal but still training. So you've got to practice safe walks is another thing. Respecting leash laws is one thing, but also training your dog to actually walk on leash, super important. And actually walking them, also super important. Avoid dog parks, as Sarah mentioned earlier. just don't go to dog parks unless you know it's going to be a good place for your dog. Unless you absolutely must, because it's the only place they can stretch their legs. I get that. I do. I've lived in an apartment with a dog before. It's hard. But dog parks are a disaster waiting to happen for pit bulls. Because again, if your dog is involved in anything, they're taking the blame. Doesn't matter if they started or not. Respect your dog's behavioral and physical proclivities, like what their tendencies are. Don't pretend that they're something they're not. Pitties can be athletic. They can jump fences. They can be strong and reactive around other dogs. These are all very real things that are happening in the pit bull world, right? You've got a dog who is excitable. They're going to be more prone towards dog reactivity and stuff. And so those are things that are good to take some time to learn about if you're going to have a pit bull. Otherwise, you're just out there representing pit bulls as everybody's favorite stereotype, and you don't want to do that. They can do naughty things, and the world will make them pay twice what any other dog has to pay, sometimes with their lives. And on that note, muzzle training is really important if you do have a dog that has social issues. If you have a pit bull who's seen some things, and they have a really hard time around other dogs or other people, that's okay. I think if you're okay with that, if your dog is good for you and in your home, they don't necessarily need to be good everywhere. That shouldn't be a requirement for any dog. But if you are taking that dog out into the world, you need to train them to wear a muzzle. It's the responsible thing to do. Muzzles get a really bad rap because they look scary and people associate them with bad things. But they're actually extremely important training tools because, in the training world, I've met plenty of pit bulls who were great little couch potatoes who loved everybody. But I've also met some that were not and needed to work on some things. And, muzzles were one of the first things we have to condition those dogs to wear if we actually want to help them. So, and expect that rehabilitation to take time too, I think is another thing. We can't go out and adopt a dog, especially one that's been traumatized and clearly has behavior issues, and expect that, just because we love them to bits, they're going to overcome those things. rehabilitation from trauma can take time, and using precautions in the interim is really, really important. So, and I'll list some social media accounts for muzzle support if you are working with a dog. There's actually some really great supportive accounts out there that you can follow, make you kind of feel a little bit better about it, teach you kind of how to talk about it, how to train it, all those other great things. So I'll list those in references as well. So yeah. So ladies, before we wrap up, do you have any, I was going to ask you just this left field question. Do you have any favorite stereotypes about pit bulls that you feel like they do apply? I have one. I can start while y'all think about
They're
it.
gassy.
Okay, yeah, no, that's a good one. Bruner can clear a room. I think that one consistent thing that I've noticed across so many pit bull type dogs that I've met was that they can triple their own body weight when being moved. I don't know how they gain that much density. The second I say off the furniture, it's like boom, like there was just 50 bowling balls in one dog, and it will take my entire body to move that dog if they haven't been trained to move. I've never seen any other dog that can do it. Like it's a gift.
I will say there is a thing called the pity scream. And it's when they love to be vocal. Not all of them will do it. I have one at home, Julie, who's great at it. And it's just this huge vocalization, typically out of arousal. Doesn't, necessarily mean anything negative, but it is an over arousal. And I'll save your ears from mimicking it. But yeah, they definitely, people go, yeah, my pity makes this weird sound. And when they're really excited, I'm like, yep, that's the pity scream. So
I was just going to throw out there that, I mean, again, you have to be careful with stereotypes, but like they are giant babies. Like I just kind of consistently see this quality in the dogs. Like even if they're nervous or they bark, like ultimately I do think they're giant babies.
I think that has to do with there's a sensitivity that is really that I've seen really consistent across most of my experiences with them, where it's like they can be very sensitive dogs, and I think a lot of people misconstrue that as being neurotic or even aggressive sometimes, because a sensitive dog, it's pretty easy to manipulate them into aggressive behavior. But they are super sensitive. Anytime I'm out with Bruner, people always want to touch him because he's huge. And we call him, the trash cow. So he's just this giant lumbering dog, and he looks like he's very sweet and very squishy, but he doesn't want you to touch him. He is scared of you. And if you go to him, he will hide behind my legs. And it's very heartbreaking. I hate having to tell people, sorry, no, you scare the crap out of my 110-pound dog, but it's true. He's sensitive.
they're not good guard dogs. I have a hilarious video. I don't think it was TikTok, but it was definitely on social media. I don't know if y'all saw it, but it's these people that are testing. I think it's a trainer maybe that put it on. I don't know, but they are testing what would happen to the if an intruder came into the house. What would the dogs do? And they put this person dressed them all in black and probably like a ski mask or something crazy, and like a like a bat or something in their hand or something like that, and have them come through the front door going, oh, like they're gonna bust into the house, and all the dogs are like, whoa, like took off running. And they did this with all these big dogs and big strong breeds, and they kept proving this point. And then of course what they're gonna do at the end, they're gonna bring out the little lap dogs who towards the end when he came in, and those little lap dogs came out just ready to get that guy out of the house. It was so funny. I nearly died, but yeah, those little guys were like, back off, back off, back off. And then, yeah, all the big dogs were like, see you later.
Okay, well, I think that's it. We did it. We covered just about everything we could on pit bulls in 2 episodes, though I'm sure we left some stuff out. I'm tired. I'm going to have a glass of wine and a nap.
Yeah.
Let's do our pluggables real quick. Lindsay, you want to kick them off?
Sure. Check out taurusacademy.com for here locally in Austin, Texas, if you are local. We do training, boarding, and play days with structured play with fantastic trained staff. You can also check out NVA, National Veterinary Associates. They are a fantastic corporation. If you are with a vet hospital or a pet resort, they are a great company to join. And then Lovable, good old Lovable for all of us across the board there. www.love-a-bull.org. And thanks for having me.
Sweet. Yeah, thanks for coming. Kaylin, you got anything else you want to plug?
Yeah, I actually was going to throw one of my other favorite pity rescues. They're based in Arizona. They're called Mayday Pit Bull. They take on a lot of behavioral cases and medical cases. So if you want to check them out, they're just a really cool organization. I also wanted to throw this plug in. It's actually where I work, but talking about the hard times that we're all facing and how that can relate to dog issues, I did want to just let everybody know about findhelp.org. It's a social service platform. You don't have to sign up. You literally just go in, enter your zip code, and you can search for things, anything from food pantries to free or reduced cost therapy. It's all social services, and they're targeted for when you're on or experiencing a hard time and you can't afford the basics and the necessities. And it's just a really great service, and it can help you as a person, and by that can help your dog. So I want to plug it on this podcast.
That's awesome.
That's so lovely. And yes, like Lindsay said, Lovable. So follow us on social medias at LoveABullATX, LoveABullATX, and also adopt my bonded senior pair who are simply perfect, Frick and Frack. Instagram at adopt.frickandfrack.
Okay, cool. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at farfetchedpod. I also have a new mini podcast called The Dog 10, where I answer listener-submitted questions about training and behavior in quick little 10-minute episodes every week. It's co-hosted with the wonderful author and rescue advocate, Kara Sue Achterberg, and you can email either one of us to submit your questions. Okay, that's it. We're out of here. Thanks again, ladies. You're all brilliant, doing wonderful work. As always, it's an honor to work with you, and I hope we can all get drinks soon.
Same.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.